Breaking developments are unfolding in the Horn of Africa. A brand new political entity has just been announced inside Somalia, the so-called Northeast State. And in a historic move, Abdikadir Firdhiye has been declared as its first president. What does this mean for Somalia's already fragile political landscape, and how will it impact the long-standing Somaliland-Somalia dispute? Let's break it down. Visual. Timeline animation showing the Sool and Sanaag conflicts. Protests in Lasanod, clashes between Somaliland forces and local militias. Narration. The story begins in Lasanod, the capital of Sool region, where months of armed conflict and deep political grievances pushed local leaders and clans to demand self-administration. The clashes with Somaliland's army earlier this year left hundreds dead and thousands displaced. Local elders and political figures argued that neither Somaliland nor the federal government in Mogadishu was representing their interests. Out of this tension, a new idea emerged, forming their own federal member state. Visual footage of clan elders in traditional dress, community gatherings, announcement ceremonies. Narration. On September 3, 2025, elders and community leaders officially declared the creation of the state of Northeast. The new state covers Sool, Sanaag, and Kain regions, areas long disputed between Somaliland and Somalia. This declaration sparked mixed reactions, with some celebrating a new dawn of self-rule, while others warning it could destabilize an already fragile region. Visual. Abdikadir Firdhiye addressing a crowd, holding Somali flags, supporters cheering. Narration. In a surprise election held in Lasanod, Abdikadir Firdhiye was chosen as the first president of Northeast State. Firdhiye, a political activist and longtime critic of Somaliland's administration, promised to lead with justice, inclusion, and stronger ties with the federal government in Mogadishu. His victory was seen as a symbolic breakaway from Somaliland's authority and a bold statement of identity from the people of Lasanod. Visual. Somaliland government press conferences, Mogadishu parliament sessions, street interviews. Narration. The response has been swift. Somaliland's government strongly rejected the move, calling it illegal and a threat to its territorial integrity. On the other hand, officials in Mogadishu expressed cautious optimism, signaling willingness to work with the new administration. For Mogadishu, Northeast State could become another federal member state, similar to Puntland, Jubaland, or Galmudug. But for Somaliland, it's seen as an attack on their sovereignty claims. Visual. African Union, IGAD, UN offices, footage of Ethiopian and Djiboutian border towns. Narration. This development carries major implications for the Horn of Africa. First, it risks reigniting conflict between Somaliland and local militias. Second, it could shift the balance of power within Somalia's fragile federal system. And third, it may attract attention from neighboring countries like Ethiopia and Djibouti, who are carefully watching any political realignments in the region. International organizations are urging dialogue and restraint, but on the ground, emotions remain high. Visual. Displaced families, youth unemployment, damaged infrastructure, militia patrols. Narration. Despite the excitement, Northeast State faces enormous challenges. Security remains fragile, with the threat of Al-Shabaab insurgency and continued clashes with Somaliland forces. Economic opportunities are limited, and basic services like education, healthcare, and water access are in crisis. Without international recognition and resources, survival will not be easy. Visual. Montage: Abdikadir Firdhiye addressing crowds, Lasanod city at sunset, hopeful youth waving Somali flags. Narration: The emergence of Northeast State and the election of Abdikadir Firdhiye mark a turning point in Somalia's political map. For supporters, it is the dawn of local self-determination. For critics, it is a dangerous gamble that could fuel more fragmentation. The question now is clear. Will Northeast State become a stabilizing force for its people, or just another flashpoint in the Horn of Africa's long struggle for peace and unity? Only time will tell. The story begins in Las Anod, the capital of Sool region, where months of armed conflict and deep grievances pushed local leaders and clans to demand self-administration. The clashes with Somaliland's army earlier this year left hundreds dead and thousands displaced. Local elders and political figures argued that neither Somaliland nor the federal government in Mogadishu was representing their interests. Out of this tension, a new idea emerged, forming their own federal member state. Visual: archival photos of colonial Somaliland. Somalia, Union of 1960-1991 Civil War. Narration: To understand this moment, we must look back at history. After independence in 1960, British Somaliland and Italian Somalia united to form the Somali Republic, but decades of conflict, dictatorship, and civil war shattered that unity. When Somaliland declared independence in 1991, Sool and Sanaag became contested regions, caught between two rival visions: Somaliland's independence project and Somalia's federal system. The people of these regions were left in political limbo. Visual: elders, community gatherings, declaration ceremony. Narration: On September 3, 2025, elders and community leaders officially declared the creation of the state of Northeast. Covering Sool, Sanaag, and Kane, the new state sparked mixed reactions. For many locals, it was a long-awaited expression of self-rule. For others, it raised fears of further instability. Visual: Abdikadir Firdhiye addressing supporters. Narration: In a surprise election held in Lasanod, Abdikadir Firdhiye was chosen as the first president of Northeast State. A political activist and longtime critic of Somaliland's rule, Firdhiye vowed to bring justice and stronger ties with Mogadishu. His election represents a symbolic break from Somaliland's authority and a bold statement of identity. Visual: tribal elders in discussions, traditional councils, clan banners. Narration: clan dynamics play a crucial role in this development. The Dulbahante clan, dominant in Sool and parts of Sanaag, has long resisted Somaliland's control. Their demand for autonomy is not just political, but deeply tied to clan pride and historical grievances. Elders, religious leaders, and diaspora groups were instrumental in mobilizing support for Northeast State. Visual: Somaliland Parliament, Mogadishu government offices. Narration: Somaliland's government strongly rejected the move, calling it illegal and destabilizing. Officials in Mogadishu, however, signaled cautious support, hinting that Northeast could become another federal member state. This tug-of-war highlights the deeper question: is Somalia moving towards unity or further fragmentation? Visual: Somaliland leaders at international summits, protests with flags. Narration: for Somaliland, this is more than just a territorial issue. Since 1991, Hargeisa has sought international recognition as an independent state. Losing Sool and Sanaag weakens their territorial claim and undermines their narrative of stability. For the international community, the Northeast Declaration complicates already delicate diplomacy in the Horn of Africa, Visual African Union Ethiopia-Somalia borders UN offices. Narration. Regionally, the move could reshape alliances. Ethiopia, Djibouti, and Kenya all have interests in Somali stability. International observers fear renewed conflict, but others argue that empowering local governance may bring stability in the long run. Visual. Displaced families, destroyed buildings, militia patrols. Narration. Yet Northeast state faces huge challenges: insecurity, weak infrastructure, unemployment, and the threat of Al-Shabaab. Without international recognition or strong funding, it may struggle to survive. Visual. Split screen. One side showing peace, development, the other showing war or chaos. Narration. Two futures lie ahead. In one, Northeast state strengthens Somalia's federal system and gives its people a voice. In another, it sparks more violence and deepens divisions. Which path it takes depends on leadership, dialogue, and the willingness of neighbors to support peace. Visual. Montage. Firdhiye speaking, Lasanod skyline at sunset. Narration. The rise of Northeast state is a turning point. It could be the beginning of local empowerment, or the next chapter in Somalia's fragmentation. The Horn of Africa watches closely.